So today we're going to be taking a look at the October 2024 astrology predictions. It's a very important month. It's going to be historic because, we have the USA elections happening on November 5th. And traditionally, October is known, especially during an election year, as a month where there can be an October surprise or a catalytic event. I feel like we're going to be seeing that. At the beginning of this month already, we already see that there's escalating conflict in the Middle East. We also see that there's continuing conflict in Eastern Europe. And we also, I believe, and I'm going to give you the dates on this, I believe we could see some difficulty with financial markets. As of the making of this video, the ports are the union that's a part of the ports, the longshoremen. They are apparently, as far as the making of this video, going to be going on strike on October 1st. So this could also have some economic implications, not just for the US, but for the rest of the world, since we're so interconnected. We also have an important solar eclipse at the beginning of the month. That's what we're going to be discussing today. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. I do practice Vedic sidereal astrology, which is the astrology from ancient India. You may notice that the chart looks a little different than traditional Western astrology. It's a square chart known as the South Indian chart. If you're interested in a personal private reading, check down below for details. If you want a recorded reading, you can email me. And then if you want to have a Zoom reading, you can book with the Calendly link down below. Also, I want to remind you that astrology readings are for entertainment purposes only. So let's talk about some of the highlights that we're going to be encountering for the month of October. And then after we talk about some of the highlights, we'll kind of break down each one of these highlights so you kind of know what the general idea is. But what I see happening is I feel like there's a really big energy buildup through October, especially leading up to the USA election on November 5th, if hopefully we see that. But also, I see some really catalytic events happening between now and December. December is going to be the big Mars retrograde moment. And then also, we're going to have Jupiter returning to an important degree in December as well. I'm going to discuss that for a moment during this video as well. Let's go back to the slideshow. So let's talk about some of the relevant transits right now. Now, all month, we still have Saturn going retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. The Saturn retrograde is going to be ending in November, after the USA election. So it's around November 15th when Saturn's going to be going direct. Now, I've been saying since January 2023 that I do believe that this Saturn in Aquarius theme, Aquarius is the natural 11th house. I do believe that between now and Saturn's transit into Pisces in March of 2025, that there is going to be a financial restructuring, a financial crisis. And I don't feel like we've seen that crisis just yet. Definitely October, November, and December could be a window where we could see some sort of crisis unfold, especially if there's a large international conflict, because that would just kind of be the domino. It'd be a series of dominoes that really cause that. But the planetary transits and the planetary placements are definitely in a place where we could see something like that. Mars is going to be in the sign of Gemini until October 20th, and then it's going to be changing signs, and then Mars is going to be entering the sign of Cancer. On October 20th, I think I skipped the eclipse. We have the eclipse on October 2nd. We're going to be breaking that down to the solar eclipse in Virgo. That's a little bit concerning considering the international situation. We'll be discussing that in a minute too. We have the Jupiter retrograde, which I feel is going to be affecting the financial markets. That's going to be on October 9th. October 20th is when Mars is going to enter Cancer. And so it's going to be slowing down in the sign of Cancer when it enters the sign of Cancer, and then all the way through November. And then we have that where Mars is going to be stationing on December 5th. And remember, it's going to be at an important degree where I believe there's going to be really pivotal events happening around that time. So between now and December 5th, I feel like that's why I put at the bottom of the slide here. I think we're in the final countdown of some really major um, events that are going to be shaking the earth. And I really do feel like this is a really big transition point. For example, there's a book out there that's called The Fourth Turning. Some of you may be familiar with it. And they talk about these huge 80-year cycles where there's these turnings, and we're in that cycle right now. So definitely there's like, this is a generational change that's happening. So let's go ahead and let's talk about, we talked about Saturn in Aquarius. Aquarius represents stock markets. It does represent the economy in a lot of ways. It represents the average worker. And we already see that there's an affordability crisis and difficulty there. So let's go ahead and let's go talk about the Mars and Gemini, but let's talk about solar eclipse first. So let me go ahead and pull up the chart for everybody. Let's talk about solar eclipse. So the solar eclipse, which is going to be happening on October 2nd, which is right at the beginning of the month. This is going to be flavoring the whole month. You know, just this alone, just knowing that the month is starting off with this solar eclipse, it already just really puts a dynamic energy into the month, considering that we're kind of expecting this October surprise to be happening. And so when we talk about eclipses, I want you all to remember that we're talking about an axis right here. So this is the eclipse axis. So you may remember that we just had the lunar eclipse here in the sign of Pisces not too long ago. And then on October 2nd, we're having the solar eclipse right here in the sign of Virgo. Okay. And it's going to be in the nakshatra of Hasta. Now, the thing to realize about this, and I align the ascendant to the natural zodiac, which has Aries as the first house, is that the sign of Virgo has to do with the sixth house. Okay, so the sixth house. And if you remember from some of my past astrology videos, the sixth house, it does have things to do. It can represent war, it can represent conflict, it can represent disharmony, it can represent people disagreements, those kind of things. It can represent even like bad health and things like that. So I'm really worried about this. We're seeing an escalation, especially in the Middle East at the moment. And then this energy is more adding to that with the eclipse happening in the sixth house of Virgo. So the sixth house of Virgo is going to represent like all of the world's problems, essentially things where, people can't get along, and it also represents societal problems. So this is being highlighted. You're going to notice, and I did set this chart, by the way. I drew a sun there, even though there is a sun. The sun is already there. But these four planets are going to be in the sign of Virgo when the eclipse happens on October 2nd. So this chart is actually made for the October 2nd eclipse, so you can see what's going on. There's a lot of activity going on. So we have Mercury there. We have, and by the way, Mercury is the sixth lord. It's exalted in the sign of Virgo, so it's very powerful. So Mercury's adding. We got Sun there. Sun is causing Mercury to be combust. And then we got this eclipse going on. So there's just so much energy just packed into that sixth house. Three or more planets in a sign is considered a stellium. I do feel like this is going to be a catalyst for the whole month. Okay. And then we have the eclipse axis, it's the 12th house of Pisces. So we have this 12-6. 12-6 axis is like one of the most difficult axis to navigate, especially with eclipses, because they're both considered evil houses or Dashtana houses. So that's the thing that's going to be difficult about this. So definitely during the month of October, I feel like we could be seeing more international conflict as a whole. Now, I do feel like there's going to be an event in the USA. I feel like that's happening. Could be in November, but I do feel like December is going to be, there could be a very strong catalytic event around December. Okay. Which is ironic. And I'm going to point this out. This is going to be kind of like we're taking a time machine especially for those of you that live in the USA. This is going to be kind of a little disturbing. But let me talk about this right now. So let's talk about Jupiter going retrograde in Taurus for a moment. Okay. So Jupiter, and we'll go back to the chart. So Jupiter's right in the sign of Taurus, which is considered the second house. I'm kind of drawing over it just so you all can see where it is. It's right over here. So the second house, it does have to do with finance. It does have to do with money. So, despite some of the bumps we've had in the stock market over the last few months, it's, people, at least people that have money invested in the stock market have been making, a lot of money on it. I'm not saying that all the working class have that kind of money, but if you do have money invested, it's been pretty good for most people. Now, when it goes retrograde, and I've seen it happen, this is going to be October 9th. I always feel like the planet, even though, in Vedic astrology, we're told that the planet becomes stronger. What I feel like the rishis mean by that is there's lessons associated with the planet and then the sign and the house it's in. So when I see Jupiter going retrograde, it's more of a sign of an energy shift. So that energy is shifting. I feel like this is more of a down type of energy as far as finances go. We could see, for example, like the stock market around that time, October 9th, there could be a really big stock market drop, or there could be some sort of problems there. Like I said in the beginning of the video, on October 1st, and we'll see if they don't make a deal by midnight here on the day I'm making this video. But the longshoremen on the eastern USA and the Gulf areas are essentially going to be going on strike, and all those ports would be affected. So that would already be kind of a catalyst for the month of October, and that could definitely affect supply chains and affect the whole USA. And then we have the October 9th, Jupiter's going retrograde. So Jupiter retrograde is, I feel, going to be catalyst for like difficulty. Now, the other thing I want to bring up with Jupiter being retrograde is Jupiter's going to be retrograde even into December, into 2025. Now, Jupiter is associated with grace, if we want to think about like God's grace, the grace of the universe. And so you notice that when Jupiter's retrograde, it's almost like there's this withholding of grace that's taking place. So when we're talking about the final countdown from here till the end of the year, we're seeing that this grace, that Jupiter's going retrograde. So it's kind of like this window of opportunity for difficult events to be taking place during this time. So that's something else that I wanted to point out. Now, you may remember in a previous video, I had pointed out that if you look back in history and you look at where Jupiter was, and there was another astrologer on YouTube that had pointed this out, and I went and I researched and I found out that, yeah, she's right. So Jupiter was at 23 degrees of Taurus when the events of Pearl Harbor happened. And so that was December 7th, 1941. And then, so that's really, kind of interesting to note. Now, that one planetary placement wouldn't necessarily like make me worried. But it's also that we have Uranus, which is in Taurus as well. That's also was in that sign as well when Pearl Harbor happened. So that's a second placement. Now, the other thing that's got me kind of thinking about this is, now when Jupiter goes retrograde on October 9th, it's actually going to be at about 27 degrees, but it's going to be going retrograde back to that 23 degrees. And that's going to be around December 5th to December 7th, which is weird for synchronicity wise if we're considering like December 7th or December 7th, 1941. So in that first week of December, Jupiter is going to be around that 23 degree mark. Okay. And that's going to be when Mars is going to be in the sign of Cancer. It's going to stop in the sign of Cancer on December 5th, and it's going to go retrograde. So that's a very powerful energy release that's going to be happening in the sign of Cancer. I feel like there's a very important event, very catalytic event that could be happening around that time, the first week of December in the USA chart. It could happen before, it could be related to the election, because a lot of times these astrological energies, they can span a very long time. But I'm seeing, there's a lot of confluence here. There's a lot of energies that are kind of lending, to this idea that there could be a catalytic event. Now, we could see the beginnings of this happening in the month of October. So that's what I wanted to bring it up for. When we think about the international conflicts that are happening right now, we're seeing escalations in those conflicts. And uh, last time I checked, USA, it has a lot of alliances and different countries it supports. So could it end up getting dragged into one of these conflicts? That's a really big question. And the charts would seem to indicate that the USA could get dragged into one of these. So it's got to be very careful about how it's navigating this situation at this time. Let's go back to the slide. Now Mars is going to be entering the sign of Cancer, so it's like beginning that whole Cancer transit. So by December 5th, it's going to be stationing, but you notice it starts entering the sign of Cancer on October 20th. So this is definitely a lead up to what I feel is going to be happening. Now, we could see some really major events around the globe in October, especially with just the eclipse alone. Remember, the eclipse is in the sixth house of Virgo. Then we have Jupiter going retrograde. These are some very powerful transits. Now, we're going to be doing an update when we get to November. We'll do another update, and then in December as well. But this could be a very catalytic event. I'm calling this the final countdown to the end of the year. And definitely, I feel like we are going to get an October surprise. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.